When Donald Trump accepted the GOP nomination back in 2016, he famously declared, "I alone can fix it." And as he closes out the second year of his presidency, Trump is increasingly alone in the White House, acting on his own instincts. But the system he promised to fix is closing in on him. The Washington Post notes this morning, nearly every organization the president has led in the past decade is now under investigation. His business, his foundation, his campaign, his inaugural, his White House face lawsuits, criminal investigations, and in just a few weeks, intense congressional oversight. So many of his closest friends and associates now cooperating with those prosecutors. None more outspoken than Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen. Fresh off his sentencing to 3 years in prison on Wednesday, Cohen told me that the campaign finance felonies he committed were ordered by Donald Trump.
He's saying very clearly that he never directed you to do anything wrong. Is that true?
I don't think there's anybody that believes that. First of all, nothing at the Trump organization was ever done unless it was run through Mr. Trump. He directed me, as I said in my allocution, and I said as well in the plea, he directed me to make the payments. He directed me to become involved in these matters, including the one with McDougal, which was really between him and David Pecker, and then David Pecker's counsel. I just reviewed the documents. Again, in order to protect him, I gave loyalty to someone who truthfully does not deserve loyalty.
He was trying to hide what you were doing, correct?
Correct.
And he knew it was wrong?
Of course.
And he was doing that to help his election?
You have to remember at what point in time that this matter came about, 2 weeks or so before the election, post the Billy Bush comments. So yes, he was very concerned about how this would affect the election.
To help his campaign.
To help him and the campaign.
And we are joined now by President Trump's current attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Mayor, thanks for joining us this morning. You just saw Michael Cohen right there. He says the president directed him to arrange the payments. The president knew it was wrong, and he was trying to help his campaign. Your response?
Pathetic. The man is pathetic. That's a lawyer you were interviewing. And he says he directed me to do it. And oh, my goodness, he directed me. He's a lawyer. He's the guy you depend on to determine whether or not you should do it this way or that way. Whether you're Donald Trump or you're me or you, I have lawyers.
But he's saying the president knew it was wrong and directed him to do it anyway.
Well, the president says that's false. And he said it was false. Under oath, he said it was false in his tape-recorded conversation with Chris Cuomo. He said it was false on 5 other tape-recorded conversations. He said on those tape-recorded conversations that he did it on his own to start, and then he brought it to the president. And then the president reimbursed him. Clear as a bell, under oath, must have said it 10 times. Okay, now he says the opposite. You're going to tell me which is the truth? I think I know what the truth is, but unless you're God, this man, you will never know what the truth is. He lies to fit the situation he's in.
The Southern District seems to be backing him up. I want to put up on the screen a sentence from the sentencing memo. They write, with respect to both payments, Cohen acted in coordination with and at the direction of Individual 1. That's in their own words, of course, Individual 1, the president.
Yeah, there'd be no way they would know that other than taking Cohen's word for it. I mean, the conversations they had, even that tape-recorded conversation that we listened to, was just the two of them. But they wouldn't
write that if they didn't have corroborating evidence, would they?
They don't have corroborating evidence. I'm sorry, they don't have corroborating evidence. Plus, they didn't let Cohen plead guilty to a conspiracy. I ran that office. I know what they do. If I'm going to use a cooperator, I make him plead guilty to a conspiracy. Because then when he goes on the witness stand, I'm able to say, this is who we fill in as the co-conspirator. He pleads guilty to an individual crime that isn't even a crime. He's going to be ripped apart on the witness stand. Can you imagine what would happen on the witness stand? This is a guy who stood up in court and said, I was fiercely loyal to Donald Trump. That's why I did it. I was fiercely loyal to him. No, he wasn't. He was taping him surreptitiously, lying to him, his client. That's outrageous. Can you imagine how a jury's going to react to that?
Well, that's not the only evidence they have, though. The other evidence they have, of course, they've also cut a deal with David Pecker and AMI. And from the statement of facts on that deal, they talk about an August 2015 meeting between David Pecker, Michael Cohen, and an individual from the campaign believed to be President Trump. Here's what they say. At the meeting, Pecker offered to help deal with negative stories about that presidential candidate's relationship with women by, among other things, assisting the campaign in identifying such stories so they could be purchased and their publication avoided. Pecker agreed to keep Cohen apprised of any such negative stories. So it's not just Michael Cohen, it's David Pecker, it's AMI.
And that's why David Pecker got immunity. And that's why Corsi doesn't get immunity, because Corsi won't say what they want him to say. So I don't know. I don't know how true that is. So you got a serial liar who taped his own client and lied about it and deceived them, and taped about 10 reporters and lied to them and deceived them. And you got a guy who's been given complete immunity.
You know how the Southern District is run. You know exactly how the Southern District is run.
No, I don't know. I don't know how the Southern District is run. I'm disgusted with the Southern District. Yeah, I'm going to tell you another thing. You see what we're talking about? It's not a crime. It's not a crime, George. Paying $130,000 to Stormy whatever and paying $150,000 to the other one is not a crime. The Edwards case determines that. She was paid $1.1 million to be a no-show in this campaign.
As you know, Mayor, the Edwards case is actually quite different. The judge in that case said that if this payment...
It's not the judge. It's the FEC. The FEC ruled on the Edwards case before they prosecuted it. The FEC ruled it's no violation of the campaign finance law. The Justice Department went ahead and prosecuted it anyway, and they were embarrassed.
And the judge said that if it was in part to help the campaign, that would be illegal. You're right that the jury did not convict John Edwards, but the evidence in this case is actually quite different.
Wrong instruction. It has to be for the sole purpose. If there's another purpose, it's no longer a campaign contribution. If there's a personal purpose. Now, think about this. Suppose he tried to use his campaign funds to pay off Stormy Daniels. It would be totally illegal. If it's not a campaign expense, it can't be a campaign contribution. These are not campaign contributions.
The corporate contribution from AMI would be clearly illegal.
No, it would not be. It's not a contribution. It's not a contribution. If it's intended for a purpose in addition to the campaign purpose. In the case of Rio Hunter, right, the payment of $1.1 million was intended to shut her up, and it was intended to avoid embarrassment with his wife and with his children. Now, which is worse?
Yeah, but
the campaign problem with the wife and the children.
But what you did, that's that case. Let's talk about the president's case.
Same thing.
No, it's not the same thing.
Yes, it is.
In this case, you have contemporaneous witnesses saying it was for the campaign. You have a statement of fact saying the president Donald Trump met with David Pecker.
And I can produce an enormous number of witnesses that say the president was very concerned about how this was going to affect his children, his marriage, not just this one, but similar. All those women came forward at that point in time. That tape with Billy Bush and all of that. It's all part of the same thing. And I know what he was concerned about, and I can produce 20 witnesses to tell you what he was concerned about.
2 weeks before the campaign.
You're damn right. And he was concerned about all of it. How do you think that?
Payments like that in the past?
Nobody else asked for payment. In the past, I can't speak to. I wasn't his lawyer in the past. But at that point, these were the only two that were asking for money. And the amount of money is consistent with harassment, not truth. I have been involved in cases like this. When it's true and you have the kind of money that the president had, it's $1 million settlement. When it's not true, when it's a harassment settlement and it's not true, you give them $130,000 or $150,000. They went away for so little money that it indicates their case was very, very weak. And look, Stormy Daniels now has to pay the president legal fees. I mean, this is ridiculous. And they're going around with this, and you're talking about all these other investigations. I'm telling you, George, they're going to go try to look for unpaid parking tickets and see if they can nail them for unpaid parking.
Well, as you know, the Southern District said this is far more serious than an unpaid parking ticket. They said this is the heart of our democratic system.
Oh, right. A campaign finance violation? Give me a break. Obama paid, what, $2 million in fines for campaign finance? This is a $300 payment. How come Obama...
Those were reporting violations, as you know. But
no, they weren't. They were so much false. No, they were not reporting violations. He has people who donated to him that don't exist. They do not exist. They're not human beings.
Here's the question I have for you. Why do you have so much trouble with the Southern District here? The Southern District's being run, this case being run by Robert Khuzami, a Republican appointed by the Trump administration, spoke at the Republican
interpretation of the campaign finance law is completely erroneous. And even if you want to make some argument that there's some validity to it, you do not pursue a president of the United States for a questionable interpretation of a statute. That is completely wrong. It's harassment. This special prosecutor was there for collusion. Now, then he went to obstruction. Campaign finance.
This isn't the special prosecutor. This is the Southern District of...
I know, but where did it come from? It was and who is on top? Rosenstein's on top. He's on top of both. So these things are connected. Why were they both in court? These things, they're passing the guy back and forth. Cohen is trying to figure out. Now he got to 3 years where he got slammed by the Southern District.
He did.
For not cooperating, which means he's lying. So they believe him on this, and he's lying about that. It doesn't work that way.
Special counsel.
I guarantee you this man never gets in front of a jury. Never. That's why he didn't plead guilty to conspiracy.
The special counsel does believe him, and I asked Michael Cohen.
He believes anybody that tells him something about the president. Look, they told Corsi. They wrote out a statement for him, a 3-page statement implicating the president, and they said, if you recite this, you get probation, go free. This is your jail-free card. Corsi said, go to hell.
You think Jerome Corsi's your best witness? He's the guy who questioned whether 9/11 was an inside job.
He's not my witness. I don't even know Jerome Corsi. I never met him. I'm just telling you what they did to him. That's a setup. Well, they set up Flynn. Look what they did with Flynn. At the direction of Comey, he said he wouldn't have gotten away with it if it was an experienced administration. Meaning he wouldn't have gotten away with unethical behavior. He tells them don't tell him he has to have a lawyer, or he should have a lawyer. So they put Flynn through questioning, and he said something wrong, and they got a document there that contradicts it. If they were searching for the truth, they show him the document, and they say, General, this is refresh your recollection. Tell us the rest of it now. But they weren't. They hid it so they could jam him for perjury. And now you got the FBI saying he told the truth, and you got the...
That's not what the FBI says. The FBI says that he didn't have the characteristics of somebody who was deceiving, even though they believed he was deceiving.
No, just the opposite. Peter Strzok wrote in one of his texts that he didn't seem to be lying. He wasn't acting like a person.
So he didn't show the characteristics and body language of someone who lied, even though they believed he was lying.
And Comey reported at the time that they didn't believe that he was lying. Way back when it was going on.
He didn't believe that.
And then here, so we have not lying, we have prosecution for lying, and we have no explanation. We have no explanation in the middle. But we do have a guy that was deprived of counsel. We do have a guy that was not shown a document that could have refreshed his recollection because they had it hidden under the table. So then they could come back and jam him. That's what I talk about when I say perjury trap. And that's why you have to be very careful with unethical process.
Let's talk a little bit.
Doing that.
Let's talk a little bit more about the special counsel. I want to show what Michael Cohen said about Russia and the special counsel.
The special counsel did say you were doing your best to tell the truth about everything related to their investigation, everything related to Russia. Do you think President Trump is telling the truth about that?
No.
Now, the special counsel's office went on to say that they found Cohen credible, provided valuable information about Russia-related matters core to its investigation, also about his contacts with persons connected to the White House in 2017 and 2018. They seem to be getting at there both collusion and obstruction.
Well, isn't that prosecution by innuendo? I have no idea what they're talking about. Beyond what you just said, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Let me ask you a few specific...
I have no idea. I know that collusion is not a crime. It was over with by the time of the election. I don't know what evidence he has of that.
Let me ask you a few specific questions then.
If it didn't happen, I can't imagine how he has evidence.
Did Donald Trump know that Michael Cohen was pursuing the Trump Tower in Moscow into the summer of 2016?
According to the answer that he gave, it would have covered all the way up to November of 2016. He said he had conversations with him about it. The president didn't hide this.
Earlier they had said those conversations stopped in January 2016.
The date, until you actually sit down and answer the questions, and you go back and you look at the papers and you look at you're not going to know what happened. That's why lawyers, prepare for those answers.
Let me ask a second question. Did the president know about Don Jr.'s Trump Tower meeting with the Russians at the time?
No. That is definitely, he didn't know about it. I think that's consistent testimony. Even Cohen. At one time, Lanny Davis went out saying that Cohen was able to contradict that. And they had to withdraw that in an embarrassing faux pas.
And did Roger Stone ever give the president a heads up on WikiLeaks leaks concerning Hillary Clinton and the DNC?
No, he didn't.
No. Not at all.
I don't believe so. But again, if Roger Stone gave anybody heads up about WikiLeaks leaks, that's not a crime. It would be like giving him heads up that the Times is going to print something. Once the crime, this is why this thing is so weird, strange. The crime is conspiracy to hack. Collusion is not a crime. It doesn't exist.
No, conspiracy to defraud the government, you're right. Conspiracy to hack, that is the crime. We don't know whether...
Now, did Donald Trump engage in a conspiracy to hack with the Russians? They've been going at it. The counterintelligence investigation came to the conclusion, no evidence. They're grasping for straws now.
Well, they're also looking at obstruction. Did anyone connected to the president ever suggest in any way to Michael Cohen that he would get a pardon if he stayed on the team?
I had this specific conversation with his lawyers. And that liar can say what he wants. I told his lawyers there'd be no discussion of a pardon. That doesn't mean the president doesn't have the power. Nobody's giving away any power, but do not consider it in your thinking now. It has nothing to do with what you should decide about yourself. I think that's one of the reasons why he double-crossed.
CNN and the New York Times are reporting this week that you're still in discussions with Robert Mueller about about an interview with the president. Are those discussions still going on?
I'm actually not allowed to say that. But the agreement we had did contemplate that there'd be a period of time after the questions that we would have a discussion about whether there should be any further questions. So I'm not saying we are or we aren't, but that's in the agreement.
And President Trump isn't that secret person who's discussed in court on Friday?
No, absolutely not.
So he's not received a subpoena?
If he is, then we got some outrageous violation of legal ethics. We've got to be served with papers. If they're now, we might be under seal, but we're not. We're not under seal on anything.
Is it still possible the president's going to talk to Robert Mueller?
All I can tell you is the agreement contemplates our having discussions if there are any further follow-ups or questions. And there's been no change in that agreement. And when it's concluded, we'll tell you. I have to say, quite honestly, watching some of the things they're doing, like letting Cohen get up and say he was fiercely loyal to Donald Trump, even though at the very time he was fiercely loyal to him, he was taping him and lying to him, something a lawyer never does. He was never fiercely loyal to Donald Trump. He's fiercely loyal to him, to himself.
He was in the past.
No, I have a client, I'm fiercely loyal to him, and I tape him, and I hide it, and I don't tell him. That's not fiercely loyal. That's called fiercely disloyal. Just the opposite. It shows all I'm thinking about is me, my own skin. And Southern District says you can get out of jail if you do this. He's got 3 years now. There's a real motivation to sing like crazy. He's got to do a lot of things to get out of the 3 years. And he'll say whatever he has to say. He's changed his story 4 or 5 times.
So is the president.
The president's not under oath. And the president tried to do the best he can to remember what happened back at a time when he was the busiest man in the world. And I was with him most of that time. I can't remember a lot of the stuff that goes on there.
Final question.
But boy, if it's same way I go under oath, then I really think about it. And I really say, I can't remember that. I was wrong about who was with me on September 11th. I always thought the fire commissioner was with me in the building we were trapped in. Turns out later, Tommy Von Essen told me, I met you after. That happens when you're in the middle of difficult events. You know that.
I do know that from my time in the White House. Final question. Mueller almost done?
He is done. But what else told you? No, the only thing left are parking tickets and jaywalking.
Thanks for your time this morning.
Bye.